Hello, my name is Anna, and I am now 31. Sometimes it feels like my whole life didn't begin with a baby's cry, but with the muffled rustle of perfect lawns, trimmed with a ruler. I grew up in a Denver suburb, where the streets stretched in straight alleys, where every flower bed looked as if it had been edited in Photoshop, and where all the neighbors had identical smiles and identical Labradors. Our house stood slightly above the road, snow-white with columns and huge windows, and inside it had 6 bedrooms, as if someone had built it for a family that loved space, but not closeness. There were 4 of us living there, me, my older brother Nathan, and our parents, Filippo and Deborah. My father, a man with gleaming cufflinks and a confident stride, was the CFO of some Fortune 500 company. Every morning he would put on an expensive suit that smelled of dry cleaning and power and leaving behind a faint trace of perfume and an unyielding silence. In the evenings, at dinner, he would talk about quarterly reports and revenue trends as if the meaning of life lay in those words. My mother had once been a TV presenter. She retained that particular sparkle in her eyes that appears in people accustomed to cameras. But by the time I came along, she had already devoted herself to charity dinners and gracious smiles at receptions. Nathan was 4 years older, and from early childhood I understood. He was the center of their universe. My parents treated him like a revelation, as if God, tired of the world's grayness, had decided to send humanity the perfect son. His every action was met with applause, his every victory with a domestic salute. I cannot recall a single day when the house didn't echo with his name. Even the walls seemed to repeat it like an echo. Nathan, Nathan, Nathan. When I was a child, I often stood in the hallway and looked at the family photos, or rather at Nathan's gallery. Soccer trophies, medals, diplomas, all of it gleamed under spotlights, like a museum exhibition dedicated to one person. My own certificates and drawings lay in a cardboard box in the attic. I knew exactly where, next to the Christmas ornaments and the old vacuum cleaner. Sometimes I would go up there, take out the box, and touch the paper, already slightly damp with time. Everything that was me lay there, in the dust. I remember my 10th birthday in minute detail. I woke up with the feeling that the world had changed. I was now 10, a double-digit age. Almost grown up. I put on my new dress and went downstairs, anticipating pancakes, candles, a card, anything at all. But a completely different life was boiling over in the kitchen. Mom and Dad were arguing about what color shirt Nathan should wear for an upcoming tournament. They didn't even turn around when I entered. I sat down at the table, poured myself some cereal, and ate in silence, listening to them discuss shades of blue. Half the day passed. 3 sporting goods stores, dozens of equipment options, and not a single glance in my direction. Only around 9 in the evening, when I was already in my pajamas staring at the ceiling, did my mother suddenly gasp, "Oh my God, it's Anna's birthday today." Dad, without looking up from his laptop, muttered, "We'll buy you something nice next week, sweetie." They didn't, and I stopped waiting. When I was 12, Nathan made the university baseball team, and the house turned into a festive pavilion. My parents rented a huge tent, hired an organizer, invited the neighbors, and even our school principal. Mom was beaming as if she'd won an election. That same year, I took first place at the school science fair. I had spent 3 months fiddling with filters and test tubes, creating a water purification system. When I brought the ribbon home, my mother glanced at it and said, "How lovely, dear." And a minute later was back to discussing tablecloth colors for Nathan's graduation, which, mind you, was 2 years away. But birthdays and school fairs were just the tip of the iceberg. The real storms came at Christmas. When I was 14, I woke up on a frosty morning, ran into the living room, and saw my parents loading suitcases into the trunk. Nathan was already in the front seat in new clothes I hadn't even seen in stores. "Where are you going?" I asked, feeling the frosty air burn my lips. Mom answered calmly, even cheerfully, "To Las Vegas. Nathan has been working so hard, he deserves a vacation." I stood there, unable to believe it. "And me?" I breathed out. Dad looked at me tiredly, as if at a foolish child. "Your grandmother will be here in an hour. You'll have a quiet, cozy Christmas." And they left. Grandma came as promised. She brought homemade gingerbread cookies, put on old movies, and didn't utter Nathan's name all day. I loved her for that, for her silent understanding and warmth that required no merit. That was when I first understood that love could be quiet, inconspicuous, and therefore real. The next year, I tried not to hope again, but at 15, a person is still foolish enough to believe in miracles. In the morning, I went downstairs and found the usual scene. Nathan, surrounded by gifts, was tearing off wrapping paper, radiant with delight. A new laptop, the one every kid at school dreamed of, then a leather jacket, a watch, concert tickets. Mom handed him presents one after another, like a Santa Claus with a personal contract. When it was my turn, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a card with a snowman and a printed message. "Merry Christmas." No signature, no enclosure, just a card. I stared at the mountain of boxes around Nathan and felt a small stone of resentment form in my chest. It was unfair. He was unwrapping expensive gifts one after another, while I was handed a single card with a snowman. I whispered to myself that the reason was simple. He was in college, he was at a different stage of life, and that mattered to our parents. "Don't be petty, Anna," I heard my father's voice in my head, and in response to that stern explanation, an unseemly feeling grew inside me. "It's not interesting to calculate the price of others' gifts," my mother would say, but I wanted someone to say, "You matter." I went back to my room, and when the door closed, let the tears drip onto the tired pillow. Crying felt like simple, honest work that evening. Later, Grandma called, listened, expressed sympathy, and I believed her because she was the only one who truly meant it. This became a pattern. Every Christmas, Nathan received amazing gifts. A car for his 21st birthday, romantic trips across Europe with his girlfriend, a wardrobe of expensive clothes, the latest electronics, everything his heart desired. I, again, received a card, sometimes with a short piece of advice like, "Be grateful," or an instruction on how to behave better. One year, a line appeared on the card. "Don't be jealous of your brother. He isn't to blame for his own achievements." And I wondered why the lessons in modesty were only directed at the daughter. Over the years, I began to pretend I didn't care. I suppose it was easier that way. When I turned 18, I enrolled at the University of Colorado in Boulder. I packed my things, moved into the dorm, and deliberately didn't look back. I called home rarely, once a month or so, usually because Mom would text asking why I wasn't calling. The conversations were as familiar as old tunes. First 20 minutes about Nathan's internships and grades, his new apartment, then a brief question about my studies, and before I could explain even a couple of sentences, the topic would veer back to him. I stopped expecting anything else and for some reason still wanted to be included in their lives. Especially before Christmas, I missed the very idea of the holiday, even if reality devoured it. In December of my freshman year, I told Mom I was coming home for the break. Exams were ending and I could stay for a week. After a long pause, Mom suggested I stay at school. This year, it might be better to spend Christmas with friends. Nathan has guests, it will be crowded. And said that, well, the house has 6 bedrooms, but you wouldn't be comfortable there. I didn't argue. It was pointless to demand a place where you weren't wanted. That time, I went to Denver but didn't stop by my parents' house. I stayed with Grandma and didn't even drive past their place. On Facebook, I saw their photos. Everyone smiling by the tree, glasses raised, caption, "The whole beloved family together." I wasn't in a single photo, and that declaration of family happiness sounded like someone else's song. After that year, I stopped asking to come home, and they stopped inviting me. 3 years later, I graduated from university with honors, got a job at Horizon Marketing Group in Denver, and worked tirelessly. 3 years after that, I was recruited by Summit Creative Solutions, one of the top marketing firms in the country. It was real work with serious projects and real money, but my family didn't care because they never asked. I turned off notifications for the group chat. There, Mom daily posted photos of Nathan with his wife Amanda at charity events and tastings, and I silently scrolled through their lives like pages of someone else's newspaper. Nathan had gotten married a few years earlier. I didn't get a call with an invitation. Mom claimed the wedding was modest, just family, but later I saw photos with about 150 people. The theme of the chat didn't change. Posts about a new achievement, congratulations, Dad praising, my brother pretending to be modest. I didn't write anything. What was there to say? Meanwhile, my own life was moving along. At Summit Creative Solutions, I rose from a junior strategist to leading major campaigns. No one handed me anything through inheritance. I invested weeks and nights, worked on ideas that tested me to the core, took on projects that made other employees shudder with responsibility. I took on the projects other people didn't want to touch, and it paid off. When I turned 31, fate seemed to decide to remind me that patience isn't always useless. I got the project immediately dubbed the biggest of my career. A major sports company was preparing for a large-scale rebrand to attract a younger audience and entrusted me with full creative control. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and I grabbed it with both hands. For 6 months, I lived and breathed that project, assembling a team, studying reports, analyzing trends, sleeping 3 hours a night. We tested hypotheses, argued, broke concepts, and built them anew. And when the campaign finally launched, the numbers stunned even the biggest skeptics. Sales grew by 37% in the first quarter alone. The day the CEO called me into his office, I stood opposite his desk with trembling knees, preparing for the usual neutral, not bad, but he just smiled and said, "You've done something special." 2 weeks later, a bonus was deposited into my account, $90,000. I sat for a long time in front of my phone screen, staring at the account balance as if it were a prank. I had never seen that much money at once before. My first impulse was to call someone, tell them, share the joy. But who? My colleagues would be happy, of course, but inside I felt this news needed to be shared not with them, with family. To hear, at least, "We're proud of you." And then I remembered the group chat where, a few days earlier, my father had asked, "Why haven't you achieved anything significant yet, Anna?" 31. At your age, Nathan was already a senior analyst. I remembered how my fingers clenched when I read that. I wanted to answer, tell them about the promotions, the 6-figure salary, the teams I led. But why? They didn't care. They never cared. So I didn't tell them a word. The money remained in the account, quiet and unreal, while I decided what to do with it. November was approaching, and the family chatter in the chat came alive again. Mom shared Thanksgiving recipes, new spices, a new way to roast the turkey. Dad discussed which wine to buy from a sommelier he knew. Then came the important announcement. Nathan had been promoted to senior manager at an investment bank. Dad wrote a message with the solemnity of a state proclamation. "This is the proudest moment of my life. My son, at 35, has become a senior manager. I always knew you would do great things, Nathan." A couple of days later, Mom tagged me in the chat and wrote a private message. "Anna, could you buy Nathan a nice watch to celebrate his promotion? Something around $1,500. Deliver it to us by Thanksgiving. Thanks, sweetie." I reread it 3 times. No please, no question of whether I could afford it. Just an order, as if I were a logistics service for other people's celebrations. To buy a gift for the brother who never remembered my birthday, for the parents who never noticed a single one of my victories. I closed the chat and didn't reply. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine and turned on my laptop. The screen glowed with a cold light as, without quite knowing why, I started browsing real estate listings. I scrolled through the pages almost mechanically until I came across one that made my heart skip a beat. A house in the Colorado mountains. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a deck overlooking the valley like a viewing platform in paradise. The pictures looked like shots from a magazine. Morning light on the pines, shadows falling on the stone facade, soft snow on the railings. Price, $360,000. I did the math in my head. The bonus would cover the down payment, and my salary would cover the mortgage. But it wasn't about the money. I looked at the house and understood. I wanted it not as an investment, not for profit. I wanted a place where I could just be myself, where no one would say I didn't deserve it, where the walls would belong only to me. I wrote down the agent's number and called. A woman with a soft voice answered, Michelle. She was responsive, lively, with a slight smile audible even through the screen. Within an hour, we were on a video call. She walked me through the house, from the fireplace with massive stone to the spacious kitchen with windows overlooking the mountains. I felt my breath catch. I want to buy it, I said. Michelle laughed, surprised by the speed of the decision. Maybe think about it first, or come see it in person, she asked. No, I'm sure. How quickly can we process everything? She explained the details, and I listened, barely breathing. I signed the purchase offer that same evening, transferred the deposit in the morning. Everything happened so fast it seemed insane, but this insanity was, for the first time, my own choice. I sat in front of the laptop as the contract was sent via email and felt a strange, warm calm spreading inside me. For the first time in many years, I had done something at the bidding of my own heart. Not for recognition, not for praise, just for myself. No one could approve or condemn. No, Anna, don't be petty, and Anna, be grateful. Just me in my house, hidden in the pine-scented air. And when the screen flashed with the transaction confirmation, I understood that for the first time in my life, I had done something truly great. Without looking back, without permission, without fear. 3 weeks before Christmas, I finally signed the last documents and got the keys. It was a cold, sparkling day, the sky clear to the point of ringing, as if time itself had held its breath to allow me to take the first step into a new life. I drove to the house alone, without fanfare, without witnesses, and inserting the key into the lock, felt my heart beat faster. When the door swung open, the air smelled of fresh wood and something new, still untouched by life. I stood in the empty living room, where the bare walls echoed my steps, and suddenly realized I was in a space that belonged only to me for the first time. The built-in kitchen gleamed with steel, but everything else, emptiness, promise, possibility. I walked through every room, as if greeting them, touching the walls, looking out the windows that opened onto the mountains, sleeping under a blanket of snow. It all seemed like a dream from which I didn't want to wake up. It was mine. A simple statement, but it held a power I had always lacked. For the next 3 weeks, I lived for that house. I'd come home from work and, without taking off my coat, would grab brushes, tools, boxes. I painted the kitchen cabinets a soft shade of gray, so the mornings in them would feel a bit warmer. I replaced the old light fixtures with modern ones, with matte glass and warm light, erasing all traces of the 90s that screamed of someone else's taste. Saturdays and Sundays turned into furniture assembly marathons. I'd put on music, open a bottle of wine, and spend hours turning screws, smoothing out rugs, hanging curtains. Every item, every detail became part of my new life. By December 21st, the house was transformed beyond recognition. It glowed with coziness and confidence, as if it knew it now had a mistress. I took a few photos: the morning light in the kitchen, a throw on the sofa, a coffee cup on the windowsill, the view from the bedroom of the snow-capped peaks. The caption for the pictures was short: I earned my house, the best Christmas present I could have dreamed of. An hour passed and my phone lit up with notifications. Messages from Mom, Dad, Nathan, all with the same questions. What is this? Whose house is it? Where did you get the money? I read them with a quiet smile. For so many years they hadn't been interested in my life, and now they were suddenly alarmed, as if I had broken some unwritten order of theirs. I didn't reply to a single message. Another hour later, a new one arrived. Family dinner, December 23rd, 7:00 p.m. This is not optional. Signed, Mom. At first I wanted to ignore the invitation, but then I was overcome with curiosity. I wanted to see their faces when I told the truth. The 23rd arrived. I drove to their house along the garland-decorated street and thought about how everything had changed. I felt no fear, only a strange calm, almost cold. When I rang the doorbell, my father opened it. His gaze was stern, his voice even. "Come into the living room." No greeting, no good to see you. Mom and Nathan were already in the living room. Mom with puffy eyes, her favorite pity tactic. Nathan, arms crossed, looked at me as if I had broken some rule they had established without my participation. I sat down opposite them. "Whose house is that?" my father asked, wasting no time on preliminaries. "Mine," I replied calmly. "I bought it with a bonus, $90,000. Silence fell instantly, thick, viscous. Mom blinked, then her jaw dropped. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You can't earn that much. You're just a manager." I smirked. If any of you had been interested in my life over the past decade, you'd know I work at Summit Creative Solutions, one of the top marketing companies in the country. I lead major campaigns. I've been promoted several times. The bonus was for a project that increased a client's sales by 37% in a quarter. My father frowned, as if I had said something indecent. Nathan was silent, but his gaze turned icy. "You should have consulted with us," he said finally, "before making such a serious purchase. You can't just spend money without the family's involvement." I laughed. It was a short, genuine laugh, sharp, nervous. "What's so funny?" he snapped. "You really think I need your permission to spend my own money?" "We're family," he said. "Important decisions are made together." "Really?" I leaned forward. "Then how come I found out about your wedding from other people's photos, or that I wasn't invited at all? Is that what you call together?" Mom intervened in a soft, drawn-out voice. "That's exactly why we're having this conversation. You've become selfish, Anna. That house is too big for one person. This year, we should celebrate Christmas there, all together." I raised my eyebrows. "No, I am not inviting you to my home." Nathan leaned forward. "Amanda is pregnant. She's been dreaming of a house like that. It would be perfect for us, especially when the baby comes. You could let us stay there, just until the baby is born, 6 months or so." I felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "You want to live in my house?" "It's spacious," he continued. "You have 3 bedrooms. You don't need that much space." Mom nodded as if this were the most logical explanation in the world. "It makes sense, Anna. You're alone, and they're starting a family. That's what real family does. They help each other." I stood up. My voice was quiet but firm. "Has any one of you ever helped me?" "We raised you," my father said, his tone implying not care but a grievance. "We gave you everything we could." "You gave Nathan everything," I replied. My voice trembled, but not from tears, from the anger accumulated over years that finally broke through. "You gave me cards and told me to stop being jealous. That's not everything. Those are pitiful crumbs." Mom, sitting on the edge of the sofa, looked up, her eyes glistening with an old, familiar hurt. "We treated you both well, Anna. You're being unfair." "Unfair?" I gave a bitter laugh. "You forgot my 10th birthday because you were buying Nathan's soccer uniform. You took him to Las Vegas for Christmas and left me with Grandma. You gave him cars, trips to Europe, designer suits, and me, cards where you wrote that I shouldn't be jealous of my brother. You didn't invite me for Thanksgiving or Christmas for 13 years. Don't you dare tell me you treated us the same." The room froze. Even the air seemed still, as if the walls were afraid to move. Then my father stood up. His voice became icy, devoid of inflection. "If you want to repair your relationship with this family, you will host Christmas at your new house, and you will let your brother and his pregnant wife stay there for as long as necessary." I looked at each of them in turn. Mom, with fake tears, habitually playing the role of the suffering mother. Father, with a haughty expression as if speaking to a subordinate who had erred. Nathan, calm, self-satisfied, confident that the whole world, including me, existed for his convenience. "You didn't invite me for Thanksgiving this year," I said quietly, almost in a whisper. "You didn't call me for Christmas. You haven't called me anywhere for over 10 years. And now you want to live in my house. "This is about family," my mother said, and her voice held notes of weariness, as if she were reciting a mantra she no longer believed in but couldn't stop repeating. "No," I shook my head. "I've had enough. I don't need your approval anymore. I will not host Christmas for you. I will not give Nathan my house. I will not come to your celebrations. I've had enough." I stood up, and the chair beneath me let out a short creak, as if confirming the decision. My father called out sharply, "Anna, if you walk out that door now, you are cutting ties with this family." I turned around. In their eyes, a mixture of rage, fear, and confusion. "You cut ties with me many years ago," I said calmly. "You just didn't notice because you were too busy worshiping Nathan." I walked out, slamming the door behind me. Their voices shouted after me, Mom calling my name, Dad hurling reproaches, Nathan demanding something. But it all sounded muffled, as if from another life that no longer had anything to do with me. It was cold outside, the sky overcast, and my breath rose in plumes. I got into the car, turned on the headlights, and drove back to my city apartment. My phone vibrated almost immediately. First Mom, then Dad, then Nathan, one call after another. I watched the screen light up and ignored every call. Messages poured in an endless stream. "You're being unreasonable," my father wrote. "You're breaking my heart," my mother wrote. "You should share what you have. We're family," Nathan wrote. I blocked them all. Then I opened the family group chat and deleted it with one swipe. That same night, I called my friends, the people I had shared work crunches with, trips, morning coffee, those who were genuinely interested in me. I invited them to my mountain house for Christmas. Within a couple of hours, the guest list had grown, 15 people confirmed. Then I wrote to my cousins on my mother's side, the ones who had always treated me with warmth. They agreed too. Christmas was perfect, without forced solemnity, without the creaky formality that characterized my parents' holidays. We cooked together. Someone kneaded dough, someone decorated the table, someone lit the fireplace. The house filled with laughter, the smell of cinnamon and roast duck. We played board games, listened to music, sat by the fire as the windows frosted over. It was a real warmth, the kind I had always lacked. I posted a few pictures on Instagram, not staged, not perfect, just sincere. Faces, fire, laughter. A few minutes later, my mother left a comment. "Nice to see you've forgotten your real family. So proud of your career that you've abandoned those who raised you." I laughed, not out of anger, but from the realization of how predictable she had become. And I didn't reply. Some conversations simply lose their meaning. New Year's Eve arrived. I drove to my grandmother's. She was 83, but her mind was as clear as the mountain air. When I arrived, she was already sitting by the window in a knitted cardigan, as if waiting. "Come with me," I said. She didn't ask a single question. She just took her coat and, as we pulled onto the highway, asked, "Where are we going?" "To my house in the mountains. I want to show you." She smiled. "I've seen the pictures. A beautiful place." The drive took 2 hours. When we arrived, the house welcomed us with soft light and the scent of pine. Grandma walked through every room slowly, like a person inspecting a work of art. She touched the furniture, looked out the windows, gazed at the snow-covered pines. "Your parents called," she said, settling onto the sofa. "Asked me to talk to you. Said you'd cut off all contact. Wanted me to talk some sense into you. I told them they haven't seen you for 30 years and to leave you alone. Then I told them not to bother me with their nonsense anymore." I hugged her. She was the only one who truly understood me. We saw in the new year together. We cooked dinner, watched the crystal ball drop on TV, and she told me stories from her youth. Funny, bitter, vivid. It was the best new year of my life. When January came, I returned to work. The city apartment was convenient for weekdays, but every Friday I got behind the wheel and drove to the mountains. The house became my refuge. Quiet, warm, real, a place where I could finally breathe. Then, 3 weeks into January, when the city was already living its gray mornings and tired evenings, my assistant timidly knocked on my office door. Her look was worried, as if she were carrying not news, but a time bomb. "Your parents are here," she said cautiously, as if afraid the very word parents could cause a storm. "They're asking to see you." Everything inside me instantly tightened, as if the air in my lungs had turned to ice. I looked at the calendar, at the screen with an unsaved presentation, and said, "Tell them I'm in a meeting." She nodded and disappeared, but returned a few minutes later with a guilty expression. "They said they'll wait." I sat motionless, feeling the familiar rhythm of the office, phone rings, rustle of papers, slowly recede into the background, giving way to an old, painfully familiar feeling, the fear of being pulled back into the life I had escaped. I could have called security and had them removed, but I knew that would cause a scene, and tomorrow everyone would be whispering about it. Better to get it over with quickly. "Tell them I'll meet them at the cafe across the street in 10 minutes, I finally said. I grabbed my coat, left the office, and crossed the street, feeling my heart beating too loudly and my hands turning cold, as if I were heading not to a meeting, but an interrogation. They were already sitting at a corner table. Mom with her hands neatly folded, Dad with that impenetrable face on which one could read only irritated expectation. I sat down opposite them and didn't order anything. "This has gone on long enough," my father said, as if summarizing a difficult but inevitable process. "We all overreacted. It's time to put it behind us and reconcile." "Put it behind us?" I repeated, feeling a wave of weary disbelief rise inside me. "Yes," my mother chimed in. "We're family. Families argue and then they make up. That's how it works." I looked at her for a long time, trying to understand if she even believed what she was saying. "You think this is just an argument?" I asked. "What else?" My father raised an eyebrow slightly, like a man tired of other people's drama. I felt the words burst out on their own, hot and sharp. "You ignored me my whole life. You forgot my birthdays. You gave Nathan everything. And me, cards with lectures. You didn't invite me for Christmas for 13 years, and the only reason you're here now is because you need something from me." My mother averted her eyes. "I saw the pictures of your house. It's very large for someone who lives alone." "There it is," I said quietly, unsurprised. "Your brother and Amanda really need more space now," my father added, not looking at me. "Especially with the baby coming. You could let them stay there, at least for a little while." I felt a bitterness, almost physical, growing in my chest. After everything, after decades of silence, humiliation, neglect, they had come to ask for the house. "You came to my workplace to ask me to give Nathan my house," I said slowly. "Not give," my mother said hastily. "Just let them stay there while things are difficult for them. You don't spend that much time there anyway. You have your apartment in the city." "That house is mine," I replied calmly, but my voice trembled with tension. "I bought it myself. I earned it with my own work. Nathan has a good job. He's a grown man. Let him buy his own." "He's saving for the baby," my father said. "Medical bills, furniture, diapers. It's all expenses. You could help if you wanted to." I looked at him and felt a strange mix of anger and clarity. "Help? The way you helped me? When I asked for a little attention, a drop of warmth, and you acted as if I were Nathan's failed shadow? Stop being dramatic," my father said with a heavy sigh. "We came here to fix things, and you're throwing the past in our faces again." I stood up. My heart beat evenly, calmly, like that of a person who has finally spoken the truth. "I don't want a relationship with any of you. You were my parents for 31 years, and you chose not to be. And now you want back in only because I have something you need. The answer is no." "Anna," my mother began, but I didn't let her finish. "If you show up at my work again, if you try to come to my house or my apartment, I will file for a restraining order. I'm not joking. Leave me alone." I walked away without waiting for them to say anything. My hands were shaking. My breath was uneven, but inside I felt lighter, as if I had finally closed a door that had been banging in the draft all these years. After that, they didn't contact me again. A few months later, Grandma told me that Nathan and Amanda had a baby girl. I didn't send a gift. I didn't call. I didn't feel anything. I just noted the fact, like news from someone else's life, having nothing to do with me. Almost a year passed since that Christmas when everything changed. I was still working at Summit Creative Solutions, and things were better than ever. In the summer, I got another promotion, bought new furniture for the apartment, learned to sleep peacefully. The city apartment became the center of my life, and the house in the mountains. My quiet refuge where I spent almost every weekend, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends. We had dinners, played board games, laughed late into the night. Once I even hosted a small wedding there for my cousin. My parents and Nathan appeared on social media from time to time. Their perfect photos, captions about love and unity, fake smiles. I wasn't in those pictures. And for the first time in my life, I felt not pain, but indifference. I had my own life now, quiet, stable, honest, without the constant expectation of approval that would never come. Grandma visited once a month, and we baked pies together, watched old movies. Every time she left, she would take my hand and say she was proud of me. That was the only approval I really needed. Sometimes someone would ask if I missed my family. I always gave the same answer. No, you can't miss something you never had. And what I have now is better. It's peace. It's freedom. It's a life where I belong only to myself. And that is worth more than all the Christmas presents and family dinners in the world. I deserved better. And finally, I got it.